Hello everyone, today we are going to talk about Storm Mastery, and to do that I will use my Stormbringer character. Now let's start and enter the game on Legendary difficulty. Now this is a mage character that is a Prophet, so a combination of both Storm and Dream Mastery, but we will focus on Storm for today. Now, for starters, let's talk about the strength and weaknesses of Storm Mastery. Now, Storm is a mastery mainly based on cold and lightning damage that has a lot of stuns, for example, Lightning Bolt, Thunderball, Storm Surge. It has a lot of potential of stunning enemies, or maybe Freezing Blast, and also the Squall ability can greatly reduce enemies' capabilities of dealing damage, and also greatly increase your farming in the early stage of the game. Now, Storm Mastery may be the best farming mastery in the early game of all Titan Quest, so we will talk also about that in a bit. Now, let's start with the bottom row of abilities. First off, we have Storm Nimbus. Now, this is an ability which is an aura. Well, not properly an aura, but it is an ability which increases both your cold and lightning damage on every attack, and also increases your damage from your pets. Now this is a fairly simple ability. It reserves some mana, so your mana reserves will be lower. But also remember that this skill also works with rogue mastery traps. So if you are thinking about doing a storm and rogue mastery combination, just be aware of that. You can also go for a trap build. Now, for its augment skills, we have Heart of Frost, which increases your cold and frostburn damage, reserving even more energy. And whenever enemies attack you, they are slowed for a portion of their movement speed and attack speed for a portion of time. Now, this seems a great skill, and it is for dealing damage, but we will see later that it has some counter synergies in this mastery, and while talking about Static Discharge and Storm Surge. But the increase in cold and frostburn damage will greatly increase our damage in the later part of the game when we are merely using Ice Shard to deal the majority of our damage. So these skills at the early stages of Storm Mastery of the game will not be very useful. You will only put some points here, but in the later part of the game, this will be your main source of damage if you are dealing cold damage via Ice Shards. Now, for Static Charge, which increases instead of cold, lightning and electrical burn damage, here we have a chance of lightning retaliation. You can see for enemies to retaliate damage, they have to attack you. So now here we have the first counter synergy. So by slowing their attack speed, yes, you are taking less damage, but also the chance of lightning retaliation will proc less often because they are attacking slower. So just be mindful of that if you are thinking of leveling a lot Heart of Frost. Now we have talked a lot about Storm Nimbus and its augment skill, and I think this will probably be it for Storm Nimbus. There is nothing really more complex about this skill. Just I will remind you that this augment in the electrical damage and electrical burn damage, cold and frostburn damage, will not pass through your pets, because this Storm Nimbus is not an aura skill. Only the bonus to all pets of this base skill will pass to your pets. So Let me show you like this. If I activate Storm Nimbus, I will have the skill active, but if I summon my Nightmare, you can see he will not have the skill ability, so these buffs will not apply to him, but only the bonus to all pets from the base skill. So remember that thing about Storm Nimbus. Now let's talk instead about Ice Shards, the other first ability from the first row. Now Ice Shards is a fairly simple skill. Let me show you how it works. Ice Shard at the base level. Now, Ice Shards does a projectile, a frost projectile launching forward where you click, and this projectile will slow enemies by a portion of their speed, 15%, while doing also cold damage. Now this skill is really simple, it does nothing more than that. But with its augment skill, this skill can greatly increase your damage in the later parts of the game. So velocity increases both mana cost, cold damage, projectile speed, and it gives a chance for the projectile you launch to pass through enemies and hit multiple targets. So let me show you by putting a lot of points. Now you can see the cold damage increases a lot, and the chance to pass through enemies is almost 100%. So you can see it's much faster now. It has a greater chance to hit enemies this way, and also it can almost surely pass through enemies and hit multiple targets. Now let's disband our Nightmare. Now the other augment skill of Ice Shard is Torrent. This skill adds first burst damage of 2 our Ice Shards projectiles over time, and also increases the amount of projectile launched. So if you can see by using Ice Shards now I will launch multiple projectiles in the general direction I am clicking, and all these projectiles will have the base properties of Ice Shard, so a lot of cold damage, and the augment skill velocity to increase both the cold, projectile, and chance to pass through areas. Let's see the skill in action, but you will probably guess that this skill can deal a great amount of damage. Just look at this. Enemies are dying really fast. Now, if you want to use this skill correctly, you will want to wait a second. You will want to use Ice Shards with your first and left mouse button. This way you can do a barrage of shards that will be non-stop by dealing a great amount of damage. And also, the nearer the enemies, the shotgun effect will be even better. So they will be hit, if they are here near you, they will be hit by all your Ice Shards. Now, this skill costs a great amount of energy, so it's probably best for you to use it in the later part of the game where you have a great mana pool and maybe a lot of energy cost reduction. Without these stats and large mana pool, will not be able to sustain using Ice Shards at the maximum level continuously, like in this way. You can see I'm using a lot of my mana and I have a lot of energy cost reduction, almost 60%. So be mindful of that if you are thinking of going Ice Shards early in the game. If you have not got a lot of energy regeneration and mana cost reduction, you will not be able to use this skill effectively. Now, let's talk about the second row of abilities. So here we have Spell Breaker. This is a great skill. Let me show you how it works in the base form.
It is decided.
Spell Breaker. Let's find an enemy with some mana. We don't have any here, but maybe some of these enemies. Look at this. Look at this enemy with mana. If I click him, I will drain his mana. Now he has a great mana regeneration, so it will not be very helpful. But this ability, what it does, it drains enemies' mana by a percentage. You can see 100% energy drain, and it does even more damage to magical. It does 100 base damage at a level maximum. And it also hits an AoE around the target as well. Now, it has a low cooldown recharge, but even though this skill seems very bad, it is really not. This skill becomes really great when you have both its augment skill and when you are facing bosses. Now this skill also works with bosses, and by using the skill 1 or 2 times, maybe even 3, but a maximum of 3, you will drain all of the boss's mana and he will not be able to use any ability. Now, the augment skill also increases the energy drain damage ratio, so for 100% that the energy is drained, you will do a lot more damage, and also increase electrical burst damage over time. But the main focus of this skill will be the seconds of skill disruption. So even if the enemy has some remaining mana left, he will not be able to cast any ability for a long period of time. Like 6.6 seconds is a lot of time. Now be mindful that this second of disruption will not be able to work on bosses because they have great status control resistance. So stuns, skill of disruption, freeze, etc. will not work greatly on bosses, but this will increase the damage you deal on them, and the base skill is good enough for the bosses you face. This will be mainly used against annoying enemies you find down the road, like for example Dragonians, like the centaurs that put the banner down, which are a great threat for mages. They do a lot of physical damage if you are not careful. So by using this skill, they will not have any mana, not be able to cast abilities for a long period of time. Now let's pass on to Thunderbolt. Let's see the skill in action. Thunderbolt. It throws a projectile in the selected direction, and it does lightning damage and stun, while also reducing the enemy's defensive ability. You can see the stun is fairly long, 3.4 seconds stun duration, but also the energy cost is really high for being only a second row ability. Now let's see the skill in action. Now the skill hit and the augment skill, Concussive Blast, hit as well. So what this augment skill does is it explodes upon impact and launches a lot of fragments that both deal more lightning damage and stun as well. So this skill basically becomes area of effect with this augment skill. Now, of course, this augment skill increases the mana cost, but it's not really high. Now, I would say this skill is underwhelming at best, but only because it's position. Now you can see we are only at the second row, and we said that this ability, yeah, it drains mana, but it does not do a great amount of damage. These abilities, yes, they are good, but early game they have not got any kind of area of effect abilities to deal with the great hordes of enemies. Ice Shard is a really bad ability at level 1, or maybe only the base ability. It's really bad. So in this first two row, you don't have any kind of area of effect ability. And Thunderbolt doesn't have that kind of good area of effect that you will want to farm in the early game. And this kind of problem will be solved by going on the third row. Here we have probably the best spell in Storm Mastery kit set, which is Squall. Now Squall is this spell. It does a tornado of thunder, which goes around and hits enemies every second. And the enemies are hit. Let me show you the base stats of the spell.
Untie the strands of fate. Your choices have been made.
Now this ability, you can see at one level, it will last 6 seconds and have only 4 meter radius, but this radius will increase by its level, and only will do 3 to 21 lightning damage, but only on a 30% chance. So the damage you deal on one level with this skill will be really low. But it has a great amount of chance to impair aim for enemies every second. But even though this skill at level 1 is really bad, at the maximum level will have almost 100%. Now let me show you at 12 out of 12. This skill at maximum level will have almost 90% chance to hit enemies, which is almost always, and do a great amount of lightning damage, as well as completely negating the damage from ranged enemies. They will not be able to aim at you, so you will not take any damage. Now you can see the mana cost is not that high, and also the meter radius is enormous. Look at this. Where is Squall? Now you think it will hit enemies over here, but in fact the radius is much larger than what it seems. So let me go to Sparta to show you. Now you can see here they are obviously inside the tornado, so they will take damage. But if I put the tornado here, you can see this target is not even in the radius, and it's being hit anyways. Look at this. The radius is enormous, much larger than what you expect. So don't be fooled by the tornado. The area is much larger, and you'll be able to hit an insane amount of enemies just putting it down. Like this enemy is being hit, it's not even in the radius. Let's put it here. These enemies are being hit. It's insane. The radius of this spell is insane, and also the damage is kind of good for the position it's in the mastery. Now, this ability, this basic ability, will fall off really quickly in epic and legendary, because its damage will not be that very high. But that is where the augment skill Obscured Visibility comes in. This will make Squall viable in any part of the game. Early game, the base skill is really good, fine, but Obscured Visibility will make this skill insane in any part of the game. This does reduced damage for enemies and also reduces their resistances for a great amount of seconds. So you can see at maximum level, 10 out of 6, enemies will have their damage reduced by almost half and also their resistances. So not only you will do a great amount of damage, nullify the damage from ranged attackers, but even if they are throwing spells at you, which obviously they are not, maybe they are not projectiles, so they can't hit you, even the spells will do really low damage, and both Squall and other abilities will do a greater amount of damage for the reduced resistances. So by doing this, Squall will do another 400 damage, 485. It will do a lot more damage. And that is why Squall is the best skill in this mastery. Now, consider also the position of this ability. We have no AoE for farming Area of Effect, and only at level 10 points, only at 10 points in the bar, you can already put points in Squall, which is really low for its usefulness. I will guess that if this game was balanced, this Squall would have to be put at least one rank higher. So maybe base skill here and augment skill here, or maybe even more high. Squall is really busted for this mastery. So what you can do is maybe put only 1 point in Storm Nimbus, level up really fast the bar, and while being level 7, maybe 8, you will already have a Squall, and you will maximize the points you will put on Squall and farm lightning speed. Any enemy you will find, any group of enemies, you'll throw Squall, run around, and they will die really fast. You will farm really like a race car. Now, but that's enough for Squall. Let's move on. The next ability we have in this row is Freezing Blast. Now, Freezing Blast, we can see, is an ability that does stun the enemies. Well, it's not stun, but is freezing enemies, and it reduces the damage they take, so they are harder to kill, but it also decreases the enemy's physical resistance. Let's see it in action. And this enemy, yeah, you can see he cannot move, he cannot attack, but my shards will do a low amount of damage. I have thrown a lot of shards to him and he didn't die. Now, even though this skill seems useless, and let me run away. Even though this skill sounds useless, well, even though you are kind of right, it has its uses, because even though Storm Mastery has a lot of stuns, like Thunderbolt, Concussive Blast, Lightning Bolt, and Storm Surge, you will not have a stun this long in any other kind of ability. So this will be great to control enemies which are annoying. For example, Banner Centaurs, which can stun you, that can put the banner down and trample you with a lot of physical damage. or really any kind of annoying enemies which cast a spell, you will stun him and you will render him useless. And also this can be useful when you are farming bosses and you have to pass through a small area which is full of annoying monsters. You will freeze them with this ability and you can just ignore the enemies and pass through. Like this way. Annoying enemies, pass through. It's not that good of an ability. It doesn't do any kind of damage. 21 frostborn damage at level 7. It's really nothing. But you can see the stun can be pretty useful. I would say my recommendation is to only put 1 point in this ability and put a lot more points into Squall. Like, it has the same row. In the early game, you will not need any kind of control ability, like Freezing Blast and Thunderbolt will be both useless compared to Squall. This is insane. Also, this can be used in... this can have the same kind of use as Spellbreaker, although Spellbreaker is really better than Freezing Blast because it works on bosses. Remember, this freezing does not work on bosses. They have a great amount of control, resistance. Now let's pass on to the next row. Here we have, firstly, Energy Shield. This is an ability that you will have to cast repeatedly. It will last a long time, 60 seconds. No, 100 second duration, more than I thought. And what it does, it increases your damage absorption only against lightning and cold damage. But even though this skill only protects against these two types of damages, don't underestimate the strength of damage absorption. Damage absorption is not the same as damage resistance, cold resistance. So even though I have minus 30 cold resistance, by having a large amount of damage absorption against cold, the enemies will not even make a dent on me with cold damage. This is an insane ability if you have low resistances about cold and lightning. Now it's a fairly simple spell, it does nothing more than that. So just put some points if you think you are facing an enemy which does a great amount of cold and or lightning damage, or if you have really low resistances. So if you are facing normal enemies and you are caught off guard because some enemies has a lightning based weapon or something like that, you will not be caught off guard and maybe lose all your health points. Now, just some points are enough, 5, 6, maybe just 40% is enough. You will not have to go all the way if you have normal resistances. If you are thinking about doing hardcore cursed gameplay, which some people do, and you will have really bad resistances, this can completely fix your problems about cold and lightning damage. So this will be a great skill, but using in epic and legendary difficulty if your resistances are bad. But in the early game, just focus on Squall. You will only need the Squall for the reduces damage and the farming speed. Now, its add-on skill, it's not that good, I would say. It's probably one of the worst abilities in this kind of mastery. What it does, it gives a chance for enemies to take the same damage that they reflect, but more. So you can reflect some damage back. That's really it. It does nothing more than this. I just put 1 point because I have +6 to all skills, So I have +1, +1, +1, +2, +2, +1 again, and this only does Dream Mastery. So I have in total +6 to Storm Mastery. So I just put 1 point and it already goes to 7 levels. And yeah, it's really efficient for some more damage, but Storm Mastery already has enough damage, so this skill, in my opinion, is almost useless. You can put 1-2 points if you have to, but it's really not that good. Now remember, you can see Energy Shield will not be a constant aura, you will have to recast yourself. Remember to do this, otherwise if you are facing dangerous enemies, you will die. Now let's move on to Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolt is a spell that does a lightning raining from the sky in this way. It has a small hit radius, even though you think it only hits one target. If there are multiple stacked on each other, it will hit more. And what it does, it only does lightning damage and a little bit of stun. Really simple ability, fairly low cooldown. I think basic is 10-12 second cooldown, something like that. It's only that. But with the Agnes skill, this lightning has the ability to bounce to nearby enemies. So you can see it hit multiple enemies, bouncing. Let's remove these enemies. Now, look at the instances of damage. You can see here we have two kind of damage. One is 1000 and one is 853. Now, even though the basic skill hits one target, and this ability says it bounces to multiple targets, the first bounce is always the first target. So you can hit the same target even if there are no nearby enemies. For example, like this. You can see I dealt 2 instances of damage again, which is 1 from the basic skill and 1 from the augment skill. So if you are thinking of facing bosses, upgrading the chain reacting damage will also increase your single target damage. Now this skill also does some seconds of stun, even though it's negligible. You will not use this skill for the stun at all. It's nice, but what it does, it's only damage. If you are thinking about doing a lightning based build, like this one does a lot of lightning damage, this can be a great add-on to increase your damage, but this skill will only provide damage and only that. Now let's talk about the next row. Here we have Storm Surge. Now this ability, after activating and having it active permanently, what it does is it gives you a chance to stun enemies and deal a lot of damage when you are attacked, but only a chance of it. It will not trigger surely, but only on a 50% chance. So you can see it has not triggered for a long time, and now it triggers. Like this. Now this ability, let me get away. This ability, even at level 1, only has a 15% chance of activating. The radius is 5 and the seconds of stun is 1.5. And even though you are putting a lot of points, these stats, these stuns will not change. Only the damage will increase. So if you are thinking about increasing your damage, this can help. But I think the best use of this ability is to stun enemies and protect yourself. So just putting 1 point is enough, because the stun will not increase by putting more points. Now, if you're thinking of increasing your damage by leveling this skill, well, do not do that. Instead, focus on Torrent, Velocity, Ice Shards, Squall, and increase your cold damage by Heart of Frost, or your lightning damage by Static Charge. Just put some points to stun enemies. Now you can see, even though this ability has a 2.5 seconds recharge, the base cooldown of this skill is 5 or maybe 6 seconds, if I remember correctly, 6 seconds. So because I have a lot of recharge reduction, 56%, this ability only has 2.5 seconds recharge. So it has a lower cooldown, so it will trigger more often. But if I remove Polaris, 15% recharge increase, now it only has 3.5 seconds recharge. So this ability will get better, and by a lot, by increasing your recharge reduction. More recharge reduction means more chance of triggering, more chance to stun enemies. Now let's move on to Summon Wisp. This will create a pet that will follow you around. It's almost invisible here, so let me move. Here you can see it better. It's a ball of lightning that will follow you around, and of course it's a pet, so it will attack enemies. And what it does both lightning damage and seconds of stun at higher levels. It has an ability Thunderclap, which is fairly good. Stunning enemies is nice. But the main focus of this ability is its immortality. Storm Wisp will almost never die. You can see it cannot be hit by enemies. 100% chance to dodge attack and projectiles. Only a few attacks in the game, like 1 or 2, maybe the lion at the end of Temple of Marduk will kill it. Maybe only Typhoon at the end of Orient will kill it. Maybe only those enemies. But other than that, Wisp will never die. It doesn't do a lot of damage with its base form, but remember, Wisp will also inherit Storm Nimbus. So be careful of that. Be mindful of that. Now, even though Wisp's basic damage is not that very good, it becomes an insane pet when you are using the Eye of the Storm ability. This ability is insane, and it's probably the best buffing ability in the whole skill tree, except for Squall, because Squall, you can see, it does not buff, it does debuff to enemies. But what it does is it lasts an insane amount of time, 50.56 seconds duration, and increases your elemental damage by 150%. All your elemental damage. So both cold, fire, and lightning will be increased. And also this is an aura skill. So Wisp will buff itself with this Eye of the Storm, but it will also buff yourself. So let's see in action. Here, Eye of the Storm activated, and now I have 302% cold damage multiplier, and 150% of that is Eye of the Storm. So I will have a lot of elemental damages for Demoskin Walkers, Heart of Frost, but this ability will contribute really highly to your elemental damages, and also it will increase your cold and lightning resistances. So you can see my cold resistances. Before it was minus 30, like this, and just a few seconds ago it was 15%. So my resistances as well as my damage greatly increased for me and my pets. If you are thinking about doing a pet build, for example Storm and Rune, Storm and Nature, sorry, a druid build, and you are thinking of going pets, so you will have beast collar rings or something like this, maybe elemental damage as pet bonuses. Now those damages will be increased by Eye of the Storm, and your pets will do an insane amount of elemental damages. For the last augment skill is Arctic's Charge, which increases Summon Wisp's ability to do damage and stuns. Let's see it in action. It's a better scene with a lot of enemies, like that one. Here, this ability is the last augment skill, and you can see it did a lot of damage, 1600 damage for any enemies, even over there. It has a really high jumping radius, and because Eye of the Storm is active, the Wisp is dealing a lot of enemies. Now it solos these enemies, and by doing some stuns, they aren't even able to move. So this is a great skill if maxed out in combination with Eye of the Storm. If you are going pets, these skills are surely a great add-on. But this in particular will be insane. Now, let's talk about the last and remaining skill, Lightning Dash. This is an ability that can be put as your left mouse button and will be used instead of your normal attacks. What this does is it increases by a chance the total amount of damage you deal, total damage increase to 100%, and it does a little bit of lightning damage, these, as well as freezing enemies. And when you are under the effect of this ability, if you are clicking another enemy, like for example like this, and you are not in range, you will move at great speed to reach that enemy and attack him. Look at this. You can see I did a little dash here because I was not in range to reach that enemy. Now this dash is what the ability does, 400% movement speed, and the 80% chance to dodge both attacks and projectile will trigger only when you are moving in this way. Instead, the chance to do more damage will trigger on every attack you do. So, I think this skill is really underwhelming, especially if you are doing a ranged build. Like, you can see I did a small dash, I didn't even trigger it now. While this dash is active, I will have a great amount of chance to dodge attacks and projectiles. But if you are doing a ranged build, this dash will last will last a low duration and will only be short. So this amount. It's best used with melee weapons because the dash will be longer. You will have more screen space to target far away enemies. So you will make more use of the chance to avoid projectiles and attacks, as well as the movement speed bonus. So this ability, if you are doing ranged, is not that useful. The damage is nice, but compared to other kinds of left click mouse abilities, like for example Dream Mastery, Psionic Touch. This is insane. Comparing the damage is really not that high, but if you don't have any kind of ability to put on the left mouse button, this can be good, but remember it's best with melee builds. Now, we have talked about every ability. Now let's talk about how to level it effectively. We have talked about this a bit in the past, but let's repeat again. So if you are thinking of going any build, any class combination that has a Storm Mastery, you will need or probably select Storm Mastery first, just to be able to rush Squall. This ability does an insane amount of damage for the position it's in the class, and just at level 7 or 8 you will already have Squall, and your farming will be insane. So what you can do is level up your first time, put 1 point in Storm Nimbus, and then level up the bar. After leveling multiple times, you will only put points in the bar, skip completely Ice Shards, skip Spellbreaker, Thunderbolt, Heart of Frost, skip completely. Level up Squall at the maximum as soon as possible. Skip Velocity, Spell Shock, Freezing Blast. Level up Squall at the maximum. The more you have, the better. Now, after you have maxed Squall, you can do multiple things. You can start putting points in other masteries, or if you are doing Storm Mastery, you can level up and increase Obscured Visibility to increase your resistances against enemies, or well, reduce their damage, to be precise. If you have low health pool, this can be good. If you are doing hardcore, this can be good to not die. Or you can put some points and increase static charge to increase even more the damage of Squall. You can level in a lot of ways, but you can see, because Squall is so great, you will often miss and you will often skip Thunderbolt completely. It's just too near to its great brother to be useful. Sorry to this ability, but its brother, its big brother, it's too great. Now, you will have to level Static Discharge to increase the Squall damage, and put even more points in the bar. You can, if you want, take Energy Shield for protection against Dragonian in Orient Act. For example, in Orient, when you are reaching Chang'an and the Jade Palace, you will find a lot of Dragonians that will do a great amount of electrical damage. And if you are yourself doing a lot of electrical damage, they also have an ability to reflect it upon you. So you will do yourself a lot of damage back. So by using Energy Shield, you will protect yourself from yourself. So this can be great against Dragonians, especially if you have minus 100% resistances from the Shrine in Helos. If you are doing a Cursed, this can be great against the Dragonians. If you are not doing hardcore or Cursed, now you can also skip this skill, it's fine. This will be useful later in Legendary or in Epic. Now, in normal, if you are not doing hardcore or Cursed, you can really put all your points into damage, it's really fine. You level Lightning Bolt if you want to do more lightning damage. But at some point, you can see these abilities will not do enough damage, maybe in Epic or later. At that point, you will have either to have Eye of the Storm maxed out with wisps, or any kind of damage multiplier from other masteries. Otherwise, your damage from Skull will not be enough, and the Lightning Bolt will only be used every 10 seconds. It will not be enough. At that point, you can, of course, keep Squall, because it's insane not for the damage per se, but the dosed damage and resistances. And you will change from lightning damage to cold damage. You will instead use Ice Shards in combination with Heart of Frost to deal an insane amount of frost damage to both enemies far and near you, and the more near, the stronger. So what you can do is, let's say this is the boss, put Squall, decrease the damage, and shotgun him while being near, and after Squall is over, he will probably be dead. This will be your end game damage dealing ability, and the more points you spend, the better. And you will have to level up both 3 skills, one to increase the base damage, this to increase the amount of projectile, so the base damage can be used multiple times, as well as increasing the damage over time, and this one against crowds of enemies, so you can hit multiple enemies, as well as increasing the base damage again. So both these 3 skills, all these 3 skills will be great to level. Now remember, Storm Mastery has not got a lot of health points, so if you are planning to not die, leveling Obscured Visibility, Energy Shield, and Spellbreaker to impede enemies' ability to use their skills will be really important. Remember to stun enemies, debuff, and protect yourself from yourself against the Dragonians. Otherwise, in a hardcore difficulty, you will die, for sure. Let's see an example of a build. Here we have my character Stormbringer, which is a Prophet, combination of Bolt, Storm, and Dream Mastery, which is focused not on cold damage, instead of what I said, but on lightning damage. This is because I wanted to not use Ice Shards. I already have a lot of characters that use Ice Shards, and I wanted a change of pace. So let me put my points back. Now this ability, this mastery, this combination is based on electrical damage and mainly Thunderbolt, Squall, this Eye of the Storm, and Distort Reality. This will be our main kind of damaging abilities. So for example, let's go to Parnassus, where there are a lot of enemies. What this build does is debuff enemies, stun, debuff, stun, debuff, petrify, stun, buff, and repeat. Stun, petrify, stun, petrify, debuff. Yes, I haven't shown this ability. Now, here we have another Giant's Bane, but it's granted by an item, Disc of Tyrannis. And this artifact is also why I wanted to do a build with Storm Mastery, which was not based on Ice Shards. In fact, even though I have put some points, the Mastery is like this. It uses Psionic Touch instead of Shards. just because I am tired of using ice shells. I have already used this so much. And because this artifact does a lot of electrical damage and electrical burn, I have decided to do an electrical build. So this is basically it. I have a lot of energy recharge, cooldown recharge, mana cost reduction, debuff, stun, petrify, so I can repeat my skill endlessly, and anytime I come across a group of enemies, I have a stun available, a petrify available. Ranged attackers are no threat to me because of Squall. You can see Squall now only does 300, 500 damage, 400. It's not that high. Instead my attacks do... there is 5,000 here. 500, 5,100. You can see compared to Squall, it's 10 times larger. My attacks are 10 times larger in terms of damage. But because it is so useful obscured visibility, I keep using Squall, even in a legendary difficulty. Now, this is basically it for Storm Mastery. You can have fun farming fast, you can have fun in the late game, shotgunning enemies, and that's it, guys. Goodbye. Be sure to put a like, put a comment if you are disagreeing with me, if you are thinking this build is great, or if you are thinking that Storm Mastery is a great mastery.